jump in. Good afternoon, everybody. It is an honor, as it always is, to be in Newark. Second time this week for me. I'm honored to stand with Mayor Baraka, and I'm honored to be with him and his exceptional team working on this water challenge, along with a big team from our shop, including Commissioners Catherine McCabe and Acting Commissioner Judy Persicelli from DEP and Health, respectively. I also want to acknowledge, in addition to the Mayor's team, Assemblyman Ralph Caputo and Assemblywoman Cleopatra Tucker. So thank you for being with us, and to the Health team for hosting us here today. As you can see, I don't have prepared remarks, but I wanted to make a couple of points. I think the Mayor wants to make a couple of points, and then we'll throw it open to a few questions. And I guess I'd start with sort of a core principle that everybody, young and old, big and small, regardless of where you are in this state, in this community, certainly in Newark, in this country, clean water is a right, not a privilege, for everybody. And we believe that with great passion. And that guides our actions and our steps that we're taking. Secondly, while this current chapter began in more earnest on Friday night, the Mayor and his team and our administration, and I have to say we've worked seamlessly together. There's been no daylight between us, and it will remain that way, and I can't say enough good things about the Mayor's leadership. We've been working on this for quite some time. So this is a current chapter, which we're taking very seriously, but this is something that we've been working on. So you can go back to moments in time. I'd go back to the Mayor's, among other steps, in recent history, the Mayor's announcing a 10-year program to deal with replacing of the lead pipes. And we're honored as a state to have put double-digit $1 million behind that this year. The beginning of the orthophosphate steps, which I believe began in May of this year. Catherine will correct me, or the Mayor. And that's showing promise. Too early to tell, but that's sending a constructive chemical through the system. It's now beginning to come out the other end, and the objective is that would form a prophylactic on the inside of the pipes over time and prevent the lead leaching that comes out of these pipes. And so we are, those are two steps of many. We have, the state is and has been and will continue to stand right side by side with the Mayor and his team, and we will do all that we can to get this as right as fast as we can. That includes, the EPA Friday night, and I'll come back to them in a second, said we think you need to provide bottled water. I'm proud to say that as of Monday of this week, we were doing just that in scale. Again, importantly for the people who are impacted from the Pequannock water source, and that's an important point. This is not the entire community. It is those residences that are impacted. A couple of other points I wanted to make, Mayor. We take this very seriously. We want to be out ahead of this, but it's also based on 3 data points. And so the city has been using the pure water filter, which was approved by the EPA, and that's the reason why they're using it. And so I think all of us believe that we need to have a lot more data to understand the exact trajectory here. 3 data points, one of which was positive, 2 of which were negative, and including of the 2 that were negative, there was another filter that was privately acquired by the homeowner, and that actually had turned out to have had addressed the lead levels to the level they need to be addressed. As Catherine McCabe will point out, even in the 2 quote-unquote negative results, the lead had come down dramatically, just not enough. And that's something that we obviously take very seriously. We will do everything we can. I know the Mayor is doing everything we can. We need the federal government to do their share and to punch their weight. Commissioner McCabe will meet with the Commissioner of the EPA tomorrow in Washington and further their discussions. She's in very close discussions, as the Mayor and his team have been, with the regional administrator, and this is now going to the head of the EPA. We need the federal government in many respects to step up, whether it's, we don't have an unending supply of water bottles is one area. And by the way, in that respect, I want to give a shout out to Anheuser-Busch, to Pepsi, who's represented here today, to faith-based organizations and other organizations that have said, we're going to help and contribute and augment the state's emergency operations supply of water bottles. And we thank each and every one of them. We're working out the logistics of exactly how that gets done. The bigger, longer-term reality, this isn't just a Newark issue within the state of New Jersey, and it isn't just a New Jersey issue. We need the federal government, and I want to thank our congressional leadership across the board. I spoke to Senator Booker last night. I was with Chairman Pallone last night. We need the federal government also to be the main actor in the long-term fix in America, not just in Newark or New Jersey, in terms of replacing and having a water infrastructure renaissance. And that is a step in the long term we need the federal government to take. So I'd ask folks, we've got flyers that are going out. I got one of them in my pocket. It's every phone number. This is from the Department of Health. University Hospitals stepping up. You saw the folks downstairs who are doing an extraordinary job. The mayor reminded me that they have basically replaced filters with bottles of water. So they've got this down, and you saw downstairs. A particular shout out to pregnant moms, pregnant women, women who are nursing, kids who are 6 and under, particularly infants. We would explicitly want to ask if you're in one of the affected areas to make sure that you're using bottled water until further notice. We're, again, you can see we're pursuing lots of different avenues here. We take this, I know the mayor takes this extremely seriously. Again, the values for us is that everybody, it's a right, not a privilege, to have clean, safe water, and we are committed to that. And so there are near-term steps that we are pursuing, and then there are longer fixes that we will all collectively need to get together, and that includes not just the Newark or New Jersey long-term fixes, but American fixes as it relates to water infrastructure. So thank you for having us, Mr. Mayor. With that, we'd love to turn it over to you.
Sure.
God bless.
Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the governor, obviously, for his time, his commitment to the city. Obviously, Commissioner McCabe, who's been with us from the very beginning on this thing at the NJDEP, Department of Health, who's also been with us here in the city of Newark. This is something we've been dealing with for over a year now. It looks like it just happened yesterday, but we've been dealing with this for over a year in our city. And it's important for us to get the right information out because there's been a lot of misinformation given out, so we want to make sure we get the right information out for health purposes. I live in the city. I use a pure water filter in my home to filter my water in my own house. My mother lives in the city of Newark. She uses a pure water filter. The other members of my family live here, and they also use these water filters. So this is very, very, very personal and important to us here in the city of Newark. I think what the governor has said is very clear. Since we discovered that what may be our corrosion control might have been losing its effectiveness, we began to introduce a new chemical, which is an orthophosphate, into the water, into the Pequannock system. Newark has a little over 18,000 lead service lines in the city. We, at this date, have maybe given out about 39,000 pure water filters, to mitigate those households that have lead service lines. Every home, every building, every, place in the city does not have a lead service line. Everyone does not have a lead service line. And unfortunately, some people do. And people that have them and live in the Pequannock water system are being affected by this a great deal. And so it's important for us to make sure we get them the right information, right, and make sure that we get them a filter. It's easier for us to distribute the water because we've already put a system in place to distribute filters. As I told the governor, we just replaced the filter for the water, and we're able to distribute it to people in a very seamless kind of fashion. Because of the water department and Kareem Adeem's leadership and all of the folks In my shop, we were able to get these filters out in a very short period of time, and we presume we should be able to do the same thing with the water. We do want to let people know we're taking precautionary measures. The city of Newark, in testing their orthophosphate, trying to make sure that it was actually getting into the system, making sure that it was actually working, began also looking at some of these filters. We went to 3 homes with the help of the EPA. We tested 4 water filters in 3 homes. 2 of those water filters came back where the lead was not reduced to a level that we were comfortable with. One of the houses did, in fact, have that. As a precautionary measure, we all got together with the EPA. The EPA made its suggestions. We talked through that. We wanted to be able to put a system together. We were able to do it on Monday to distribute water until we figure out what's happening. We absolutely do not have enough information one way or another to determine whether the filters are working or not. In the meantime, we're going to give out water until we're able to make those determinations. 3 data sets is absolutely too small when you're talking about 38 to 40,000 filters that were given out in the city. So that's where we are, and I'll turn it back over to the governor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I think what we'll do is we'll take questions, and then if we need to roll in some of the experts, is that all right with you?
Sure.
We will do just that, please.
Just to make sure we get this on camera, Ina Jones from CNN. I want to make sure either the mayor or the governor can walk us through the timeline of when Newark realized that it had a lead problem in the water, when it determined what was causing that problem, what steps it took, and when it told people about it. President.
Mayor, you're better.
I could speak to that in a general sense. Obviously, we have to test all the time. We get elevated levels. The DEP tells us that there are elevated levels in the water. We have to figure out why those levels are elevated. Sometimes you get a few elevated levels. There has to be a consistent amount of elevated levels over a period of time. We get that, right? We had CDM, which is our outside engineer, begin to investigate that for us. They made a preliminary guess that maybe the not orthophosphate, maybe because it wasn't that, maybe the corrosion control, the silicate, right?
Silicate. Okay.
The silicate that we used then was losing its effectiveness. The department then took a pipe and sent the pipe to the EPA to verify what the causes were. The EPA sent us the pipe back and, in fact, validated that the silicate was losing its effectiveness. At that point, we began a number of things. We began to distribute filters to folks. We began doing the robocalls. We began having teletown hall meetings with the residents in this community and face-to-face town hall meetings as well. Our operation was centered around distributing filters. It was centered around getting a new corrosion control inhibitor that wasn't a silicate that the other water system was using, but they were using the orthophosphate. We wanted to use that. So we got the approval from the DEP, approval from EPA, so we could institute the new orthophosphate. We did that, and at the same time, we began a very aggressive program to change the lead service lines. It was very costly to do, and so we've changed over 700 lead service lines in the city thus far. By the end of the year, we're hopeful that we're going to have changed at least 1,500 of those lead service lines.
Just to be clear, you mentioned this has been going on for more than a year. We know there was a lawsuit filed, and then October 2018, I believe some of this began. Will there be any access to an actual timeline of when the...
Sure. I mean, the timeline is public, so I'm sure you get your hand on it. The lawsuit actually came after we began announcing the fact that we have this problem, right? So it wasn't that people investigated and found a problem and they started passing a lawsuit. That's not what actually happened. We announced that we had the problem. We talked about what the problem is. We put out a robocall, and there was contention about what the actual message should say. And we still have this contention today because there are people who are, using this as an opportunity to put a wider message out that's just not true. I know a mixture of the truth is a little bit more interesting than the truth, but the reality is the water in the reservoir does not have lead in it, right? When the water leaves the reservoir and goes to our pipes and gets in the pipes in people's homes, lead leaches from the pipes and gets into people's water. That is the difference of how people are explaining this. And we want to make sure that it's correct.
So we're going to move on. Great job. Please.
Could you talk about,
By the way, Amy Cosmos from Pepsi is here. And again, thanks to Pepsi for your help.
could you talk about the new water bottles? I know there was an expiration problem with the others.
Yeah.
Like, what's the new date?
So
And-
the word expiration is not an accurate assessment. It's best used by, and we've got a whole new generation of bottles that are in there. I'm not sure what date they have on them. I'm not sure if Dan Kelly knows. But the first batch of bottles, the current batch and the future batches are all completely safe. And the state has, I believe, to anticipate this, about 70,000 cases in our emergency operations. And again, I want to thank the corporate, faith, and other organizations who have volunteered to step up and augment that supply. Please, Brenda, we'll go one, two. I'm sorry?
Governor, could you talk about what the new protocol for testing might be going forward? You're going to take a larger look at filters across the city. What kind of sampling is this going to involve? What kind of results are you going to need to see in order to either continue or discontinue?
Declare success or go to Plan B. So the answer is top line, and if with the mayor's blessing, I'm going to ask Catherine to come in and address that. The testing, the exact elements of the testing are still to be determined. That's part of the reason why Catherine is visiting with Commissioner Wheeler tomorrow in Washington. Would you like to come in and add a little bit to that? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah.
We have reached agreement with EPA. We've been working really hard for the last couple of days with the city, as well as the EPA regional folks and EPA's National Office of Research and Development, to make sure that everyone agrees on what the protocols for the next round of testing should be. There are very important and very technically complex issues about how you test, and there's also the question of how many samples do you need to take, more water samples citywide, to be able to get a scientifically representative picture of whether there's a widespread problem. I want to emphasize that we only have results from these 3 homes to date. And as the governor stated, at 2 of those homes, the filters did remove most of the lead, but they did not remove it down to the levels that we were expecting and that we want to see under EPA's action level of 15 parts per billion. And that's why we got concerned about why we are seeing this and called EPA to help us. EPA's advice and EPA's technical expertise is what we've been relying on throughout this effort to come up with appropriate not only fixes for the corrosion control for the water system, but also to rely on the pure filters that have been deployed. EPA is as surprised as we are. These pure filters were used in Flint. They did a big study in Flint to show that these filters were effective at even the higher levels of lead that they had in Flint, which are not like the levels that we have here in Newark. So I want to emphasize again that EPA is as surprised as we are, and EPA is going to help us with the solution. That's why I'm going tomorrow to Washington to talk to Administrator Wheeler. The regional office and the Office of Research and Development have been terrific working with us, as has the city and the city's contractor. I can't tell you when we're going to have it. We know what we need to do, but we're not sure how long it's going to take us yet. They are working on answers to that presently.
So I want to pull Kareem up to make a Newark specific perspective comment, but I want to just as a general matter, the EPA and the federal government are going to have to punch their weight. This is well beyond any challenges Newark might be facing, never mind other communities in New Jersey. This is a national challenge. Kareem, why don't you add to that?
Results of 15 parts per million to discontinue the bottled water.
I'm going to let Kareem, I'm going to let the experts address
So
that.
as the commissioner said, we temporarily worked, we just finished working on the protocol for that. She's going to DC tomorrow?
Yes.
To work on that, so we know how many more homes we need to test to expand that sampling pool. It's only 3 data points right now, and as a caution, we're giving out the bottled water till we do expand that sampling pool and come up with the fine-tuning results of where we need to be at. So I want to give a timeline of what happened. In January of 2017, the state required us, every municipality in the state of New Jersey, the state was being proactive. After April of 2016, a bunch of schools in New Jersey had outbreaks with lead. So they asked all the large water purveyors to go back out and sample your system, source water, and revisit your sampling pool. For Newark, in July of 2017, we had our first violation. So when you have a violation under the lead and copper rule, you're required to do a couple of different things. It's remedies that you have to follow. Newark went along and it's called the desktop analysis of where you at and looking at your corrosion there, but we did that. In December of 2017, we received another violation. Immediately, the city went out and brought a consultant on board to have a fresh set of eyes to start looking at things we didn't look at. We immediately engaged with our consultant, the EPA and the DEP, to start looking at the EPA's lab in Cincinnati, Region 5?
Yes.
Region 5, to examine pipe. We sent pipe to them while we were still conducting studies to do pipe scale analysis, where they put this pipe under very high-end microscopes to look at the corrosion inhibitor and look at the coating that the sodium silicate was doing on the pipeline. Because early on, when CDM came on board, they mentioned that maybe the sodium silicate treatment that comes out the Pequannock treatment plant was losing its effectiveness. We had those results back in late October. In late October, we had the press conference just like this to announce that we're going to be giving out filters as a temporary measure, right, to protect people immediately from effects of lead coming through the water. And soon after that, the city aggressively started purchasing equipment to install a temporary orthophosphate treatment facility, which came online on May the 7th. Prior to that, we also rolled out our lead service line replacement program in April of 2018. We launched construction in the first phase of that in March of 2019. You know, thanks to the governor and our Texas delegation and the mayor, we had a hard fight to change money. We couldn't use public money on private property to replace these lead service lines that homeowners own. And the governor, we were able, through our Texas delegation in the state, pass an amendment to change that type of legislation requirements to use that money. Fast forward, today, as we were monitoring the effectiveness of our orthophosphate traveling through the distribution system in the Pequannock area, we tested a couple of filters at that same time to look at their effectiveness. And during those testing of those filters, we found out that 2 of them didn't reduce the levels to the desired level we were looking at. And one house passed with flying colors to the level that it should be. This is not new to Newark. The source water that comes down from the treatment plant is free of lead. We have approximately 18,000 lead service lines in the entire city. In the Pequannock system, we have about 14,000, a little over 14,000 remaining. And what happens here is the lead service lines, as water into that pipe, in some homes, is starting to leach into the water. And the filters were brought in to help us protect people immediately as we try to get the orthophosphate in and change lead service lines at a pace. This is a national issue. You see every other day, someone is always popping up in some community or town with a lead exceedance, right? Newark is in front of this. We've been in front of this, working with the DEP and the US EPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. Again, I want to thank Kareem and Dr. Wade in particular from Mayor Baraka's team. So please.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you were in the North Ward about 3-4 months ago talking with new homeowners replacing their lead service lines. How do people know? Can you explain to us how people find out if they have a lead service line?
Sure.
And especially because there are a lot of rental properties here in Newark,
Yeah.
the intricacies of making sure the property owner is there versus the rental tenant.
Right.
Can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. The whole time we've been telling people, first they could call the water department. We've been doing free lead testing at homes, and we've been coming out, takes about 3 to 4 minutes to tell you if you have a lead service line or a copper line. There is a website that we put up that says NewarkLeadServiceLine.com. They can go there and see if their home, based on the records that we have, whether there's a lead service line in their home. These are old homes. We have most of the data for that, and so we'll be able to tell you if you have a lead service line right away. The issue is that people have to give us permission to come on their property and change their lead service line because it's private. It's not we don't own it. The water department don't own it, so we can't just fix your lead service line. You have to contact the city and give us permission to come onto your property and do that. And when we've been going door to door, that's how we got a lot of these filters out. So we've been able to let people know that they have a lead service line. Please fill this out. Come get it done. And when we fix one person's block, other people come out on that same block and have been saying what's going on, and we get them to fill it out as we go.
Let's go right here. We only have time for a couple more. We got to get back and help try to fix
You
this.
had referenced in earlier comments the fact that this is not only a Newark problem, this is
Yep.
a New Jersey problem, it's a national
You
problem.
bet.
But in terms of New Jersey, and maybe Commissioner McCabe could also help to explain this, how concerned are you I mean, we're talking about an old infrastructure in many areas of our state.
Yep.
How big of a problem potentially is this? Is it going to get worse? And then maybe the commissioner could talk about specifically, what should people do? You hear you're supposed to run your water for 30 seconds. I've heard the
Yep.
mayor said, run it for 5 minutes.
Yep.
How do we deal with this?
I will let the experts answer the specifics associated with that. Is it going to get better? It will not get better in the absence of action. And that is where, in particular, we need federal help. And not just New Jersey. This is a national matter. But certainly in the state, we've got infrastructure in a lot of places that's over 100 years old. We had a water roundtable 6 months ago, Kathleen, wherever you are, and it's also striking that it's, you would think, I had thought it was an urban-only challenge, which it is. It's also got rural and suburban elements to it as well. We have some water infrastructure in the state that still includes, believe it or not, wooden pipes, to give you a sense of how old this infrastructure is. So in the absence of inaction, the challenge isn't going away. As I said, I want to reiterate, I think the mayor and I both share this, that our congressional delegation, led by our senators and our members of the House, get this. Senator Booker, in particular, has been an advocate for pushing water infrastructure national legislation that would help across the country, including New Jersey. And that's something we're going to continue. We've been speaking actively with them. Again, this didn't start Friday night. We've been talking and acting and discussing this now for quite some time, and that conversation has been a part of it. I'll ask Catherine and/or Judy to come up quickly and how do you know if you've got a problem and how long you should let the water run? And you may want to jump in as well.
How do you know if you have a problem? First, do as the mayor said. If you're living in Newark, go to their website and figure out whether the address that you're living at, whether you own it or you're renting, is listed as having a lead service line. I have to say that you can't completely be sure, even if you're not listed on that inventory, that you don't have a lead service line, because the records are old like the houses, and old things tend to be imperfect like some of us. And it is going to take a long time before the state of New Jersey is able to say with certainty what is the total number of lead lines in the state. We estimate it at this point based to be about 300,000 lead lateral lines. If it cost, roughly estimating high, $10,000 to replace each of those lines, you're talking about an expense of $3 billion. So yes, this is a problem that is not only all over the state but all over the country, and that is what the federal government has failed to come to grips with so far. EPA has not yet issued any regulations that really address the full extent of what you can do, but the advice that they generally give is that you flush your pipe, you flush your tap, your drinking water, usually for 3 to 5 minutes, especially first thing in the morning when it's been sitting stagnant overnight. We had said, based on EPA's advice from the pipe test they did, that unusually here in Newark, EPA was not so sure that that advice was going to be effective in Newark, and therefore you have the water filters, and now to back up the water filters in case that's a problem, we have the bottled water. Again, small evidence, no indication yet that these are widespread failures of the filters, but we're working on determining that now.
We're going to have Judy come in just to give a Department of Health perspective. We'll take one more question. Apologies. So we gotta
Thank you,
get back.
Governor.
Judy.
I just want to assure you that the Department of Health is working closely with the city of Newark, and we're concerned about the lead levels, particularly in children. And we are recommending, and as you know, in New Jersey, it's a requirement that children get tested for lead at 1 year and at 2 years. And if you have not been tested, all children 6 years and younger should be tested. Most importantly, we're concerned about the whole state. And we have a lead program within the Department of Health. We work with the local health departments, the local health officers. We help them interpret the results that they get, and we are really about prevention. It's the children who are most important, 6 years and younger. Pregnant women, nursing women should be used bottled water. Children 6 years and younger, bottled water till this is resolved. And I have to assure you that the health officers throughout the whole state are working with the lead program, which is headed by very competent scientists, working closely with the health officers to prevent any adverse effects on the children of New Jersey. That's what's most important. And I want to also emphasize there's a nutritional aspect to this. We're encouraging nutrition of vitamin C, things that interfere with the absorption of lead, like calcium, the intake of calcium. So there's a nutritional aspect. Our WIC programs are open and ready to give, ready to feed formulas for mothers who are reconstituting with water. And I want to draw your attention to hashtag no lead. Look at it. It'll give all of the communities the information that they need to protect our children. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to Brian for the last one. But before we do it, again, forgive us. We love being with you, but we have to get back to work on this. I will say this: we are, as you can probably tell, we are the mayor. I'm confident I can speak for him. Trying to get this in the right balance. Okay, so clean water is a right, not a privilege, particularly for pregnant nursing women and for kids 6 and under. That's our main focus. But again, I want to reiterate, we're pursuing a whole range of avenues here, and we will not relent until we have exhausted all of them. But these are 3 data points. And so we are acting in, to use an overused phrase, in an abundance of caution. And to make sure that we're getting out ahead of this and not be dragged by it. Somebody gave people have given us a lot of grief about Lake Hopatcong. We have higher standards. We want to get out ahead of things. We want to have an abundance of caution. And that's the same that drives us here, Mayor, and it drives us around the state. But we also want to be fact-based and make sure folks understand where they can go, what the resources are, what elements of the population are more acutely at risk than not. And bear with us, and as we have more information to report, I promise you, whether it's the mayor and his team or our team, we will be very forthright with that information. None of this is behind closed doors. Brian?
Governor, for both you and the mayor, I would think, as far as the bottled water is concerned, you hinted that you're trying to make arrangements with Anheuser-Busch and Pepsi. For the people out there who have been getting it, had it interrupted slightly because of the question over the expiration date, what assurances can the two of you give that there will be a steady stream of water in the coming days and, if necessary, coming weeks?
So I'm going to give you mine, and I'll ask the mayor to come in, and then we're going to close things down. And again, apologies. Please, may I once more quibble with the word expiration. It's best used by. That batch of water is safe. The current batch and any future batch, we will not put water out that is not safe. You have my word. We have 70,000 cases. I'm not sure how much Pepsi's and Anheuser-Busch and the faith communities are sitting on, but there is not an unending supply absent the federal government. So on the list of asks for the federal government that Catherine will be reviewing, both in her letter from Monday and her meetings tomorrow and her discussions, and with the mayor, I'm sure, is we're going to need, depending on how long this goes on, we don't know. This is something we may be able to resolve quickly or not, but there's not an unending supply, and that's one area where the federal government certainly can, we're going to need them to punch at their weight. Mayor, do you want to add anything to that?
Yep, just that the U.S., we paused for a second to get clarity. U.S. FDA verified for us, Department of Health verified for us that the water was okay, that there is no shelf life to water, that was based on something else. So we continue to do that. But in the meantime, thank God we got water that has a different date on it because we don't want to create more hysteria. And we're getting an abundance of people who are coming in asking us, do we need support and help? So I want to thank all those people. And what the governor said is obvious. We don't have enough, and we need as much as we can get.
Amen. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Mayor Baraka, Dr. Wade, Kareem. I want to thank our commissioners and the entire squad, both in Newark and the state, that are working on this. Please bear with us. As we have more to report, we'll get back to you. Assemblywoman, Assemblyman, always a pleasure.